So, I have been talking to a lot of people the past couple of days, and I have been seeing a lot of things the past couple of days, and I do have an update about the Toys for Bob situation. And generally, it actually looks like it's headed towards a positive direction. There's still a couple pitfalls that we have to get through, but overall, it seems like much smoother sailing from this point on. Let's talk about it.
Whoa!
What's up guys, Canadian Guy here, and I am back with a video in regards to the Toys for Bob situation. Now, if you are unaware, the fiasco that's been going on the past couple of days is that apparently Xbox had shut down the doors to Toys for Bob's offices. Now, the wording of the original article was really poorly done, and the numbers definitely didn't make a lot of sense. And unfortunately, it came off as if Toys for Bob, as a company, as a studio, as a whole, was getting shut down. However, that was not the case, and we found out that Toys for Bob, though is being downsized from about 86 to 50 people, is going remote, which means all the employees that are currently and still working at Toys for Bob will be working from home. So let me make this clear. Toys for Bob as a company is not shutting down, but is simply going remote. Now, you're going to have a lot of questions because it might be like, why are they going strictly remote? Why would Microsoft do this? What's the challenges that they're going to have to encounter, and all of these other things, but there needs to be some clarifications that needs to be made. So let's rewind a little bit and start all the way back to the original layoff. Recently, the FTC submitted a complaint against Xbox for all the layoffs that they are doing. Now, if you're unaware, FTC still has a case against Xbox for this acquisition, and they are now adding to the fact of all the complaints about the fact that 1,900 employees were just laid off. But Microsoft fired back and actually responded by basically saying that even if the acquisition did not complete, Activision was already planning on mass layoffs internally. And unfortunately, those layoffs did affect Toys for Bob, affecting their core team size from about 85 to 50 people. Now again, during the fiasco that we thought that everything was burning down to the ground and Toys for Bob was just gone, Jez, along with a number of other reporters, went investigating and found that no, Toys for Bob is not shutting down, but is going remote. But recently, Jez hopped onto the Rand al'Thor podcast, which is a podcast by Rand al'Thor that talks everything Xbox, and basically explained everything that he found out and the reasoning why Toys for Bob went remote. And what we found out was that actually, Toys for Bob opted to go remote. But why? Let's find out. Now, this clip has been edited for time, but its integrity remains the same. Let's check it out.
You know, there's the Toys for Bob studio closure, which people had reported, and then it was like, actually, no, they're just working from home because the studios are shut down, but there was reported that the studio was closed down, period, right?
And I actually heard that the studio opted and wanted to work remotely. You cut the commute out of your daily life. That saves people personally a lot of money, especially in a town like San Francisco, right? Toys for Bob is not shutting down, and it was... I had a huge amount of because there's a lot of huge fans of Spyro and Crash, and on YouTube there's a bunch of YouTubers who are dedicated just to Spyro and Crash specifically, and Toys for Bob content, right? And yeah, these aren't huge channels; they're not millions and millions of subscribers, but it's such a passionate and small fan base, and they're at the mercy of Microsoft now, and the mercy of this merger and this acquisition. And so I went chasing that down straight away, and it took me a long time, and I was working on that at the wee hours of the morning. I got so many DMs about Toys for Bob because the studio itself, the offices had been, the lease had expired and they decided not to renew it. And it turned out, no, they are going to be a remote studio, and they're going to continue, and they're going to have new projects, and they're going to grow again, probably, when the new projects are set up and they need more staff to scale. But they've also been supporting Call of Duty, which means they had staff they probably decided they don't need anymore. They also had on-site staff, which they don't need if they're going remote.
So the office building that Toys for Bob was in, which by the way is a retired airplane hangar, the lease was coming up to be renewed. And because there was only 50 people and the studio is absolutely massive, they found that there was no reason to renew the lease because it probably cost a lot of money. Now, I have to explain myself a little bit when it comes to this next point. There is someone who approached me privately with information about what's going on behind the scenes at Microsoft and their thoughts towards Toys for Bob. Now, I have spoken to this source in the past and they have been pretty accurate. However, when I asked if I could report this, they agreed that I could report it. However, I could not source to say who it was. Now, I have been in this community for a long time now. I've been reporting about Crash and Spyro for many years. So I hope that in me saying that this source didn't want to be named but told me this information and that they have proven themselves to me in the past, I am hoping that it can be trusted that it was said and that people don't think that I'm just making things up. So I'm just saying, I will tell you the exact quote that I was told, but I cannot tell you where the source is from. So I will just say this small and short statement. Microsoft is dedicated to Toys for Bob and their IP, so don't worry. Now, does this mean that Microsoft is going to make sure that more games are made? Are they going to make sure that Toys for Bob is taken care of? I'm not sure, but the implication says that Toys for Bob seemingly is going to be in safe hands along with all the IPs that they handle. Now, this is up to you to decide if you believe that or not. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying I believe this person and they have been accurate in the past in private with me. Along with this private source, I have spoken to other sources as well who are much closer to the situation. And from that, I've been able to pick up little nuggets of details and been able to kind of build a little bit of a theoretical timeline of what's going on at the moment. So I wanted to share what that is with all of you, but I want to reaffirm that what I'm about to tell you is not necessarily 100% what happened, just what I am thinking has happened using the information that I have mentioned in this video, along with some small details that I have gotten from other people and from other conversations and from what I've heard through the grapevine. Now, once again, like I mentioned at the start of the video, the layoffs were going to be inevitable under Xbox or Activision. Activision was hiring like crazy, especially after a little bit after the pandemic, and they just thought, hey, the next Call of Duty will pay for it all. And with everything being restructured and how Call of Duty has been received recently, that strategy was not going to financially make any more sense, especially with the economy that we're in now. And when Xbox came in and found all the layoffs that Activision was going to do, they found that they had to also pull the trigger on that as well because it was set up to fail to begin with because they hired en masse without thinking about the cost. Additionally, an analyst came on board and actually talked about this rumor that Xbox kind of had to pull the trigger on the layoffs because in the past, this analyst had shown that Activision was not making the growth markers that they were saying that they wanted to. It seemed like this was the most common factor to many layoffs in the gaming industry over the past year. Simply not enough growth. So there is evidence to back up what Microsoft was saying in response to the FTC, which really sucks for everybody involved. Additionally, Toys for Bob was not just hiring for their own projects like Crash Team Rumble or perhaps even Spyro 4, but they also were hiring for Overwatch and Call of Duty. And Toys for Bob has seemingly and likely have had their support pulled from those games. So now they're just working on the titles that they are leading. However, in doing that, they also had a cut to their employment because of the fact that they are now working on significantly less projects. So after the 1,900 layoffs across both Activision and Microsoft, there were 50 employees left. Now, this was 50 employees in a gigantic retired airplane hangar turned into an office space. And I can give firsthand experience because I've actually been to this space and it is absolutely massive. Like the size of this office is awesome, but it is gigantic. gigantic. Now, like I said, I was speaking to some sources who were closer to the situation, and the sources that I've heard said that the size of the building was already massive and was a gigantic hole for money, especially when it came to maintenance and constant costs every month, and that it didn't make sense even when they only had around 100 people to fit within that space. Now there's even less people, 50, and already a large number of them are already working remote. It doesn't make sense to maintain that building. Well, it just so happened that, according to Jez, the lease came up for renewal. And once again, likely because due to the cost of the building and the number of employees that they had there, it didn't really make sense to renew and maintain this building. So Toys for Bob opted and turned to go remote. Now, while Toys for Bob is in this remote phase, it also seems like that they are in a reassessment phase, as in they're trying to figure out who is going to work on what project, how many people, etc., etc. Like, who's going to work on Crash Team Rumble, if they're going to continue supporting Crash Team Rumble, who's going to work on Spyro 4, or any other project that they have in the pipeline. Once they figure out who is working on what, they will likely start to increase their employee size and start to figure out what needs to be done for each project and who needs to be hired for what. Now, it is possible that Toys for Bob down the road will actually get into a new building space that is much smaller and much cheaper for the entire team. However, that has not been confirmed. It's possible they might just stay remote. However, it is a possibility down the line. And again, based off of the quote that I was told in private, can't share the source, that Microsoft is dedicated to Toys for Bob and their IP, so don't worry. What that tells me is that Microsoft wants Toys for Bob to continue to work on the projects that they want to, like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. So if Toys for Bob wants to keep working on Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, the likelihood is that they will work on Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. But there are still a few questions to this whole situation. Like, 1, what's going to happen to Crash Team Rumble? Will it still be supported? Will it continue? 2, what about Spyro 4? We literally just did a video showing that there is strong evidence to suggest that right now Toys for Bob is working on a brand new Spyro, and that the production started late last year. So is that potential project going to continue? Or is it possible that they have to restart from the beginning? We don't know. But what I do know is that I will be updating all of you about everything in regards to news about Crash and Spyro, whether it's a brand new game, whether it's any updates, or anything to do with this entire situation. So if you want to stay tuned for all of that, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned below. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.